What's going on? My name is Joe. I practice talking on the internet, and I'd like to thank the supporters on Patreon for making sure I keep the lights on. Because without their support, I would not be able to make videos. So if you'd like to be part of this growing community, be sure to go to patreon.com/Joe Lewis with 2 O's, which will be in the description as well. I'd like to thank Jane, Marking, Maru, Frackle, Liberation, Valentine, and Michael for their contributions. I've been kind of skirting this topic for a while, and I want to kind of tackle it head on, and that is politics. What is politics? How we navigate it, and kind of just how I see it. So we're gonna get some definitions out of the way because that's important. Politics for me is just group competition over scarce resources and various activities that comprise this competition. So what does that look like? With this definition, that means a vote for one candidate is not a vote for another. Every dollar spent towards something does not mean it's being spent towards somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera. So the competition over these scarce resources and the activities that comprise this competition is politics. And what gets kind of, I don't know if it's fucked up or messed up, is what those resources are and how it moves. So basically what you have when it comes to resources are tangible resources and intangible resources. Tangible resources are just things that you can practically see, which is like time, money, public policy, and votes. These are finite resources. They're scarce. So not every vote for a defense budget can also go towards housing. Doesn't work like that. Every dollar spent towards public housing cannot also be spent towards healthcare. Time invested in the economy cannot also be invested in education, etc. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So when we're competing over these scarce resources, that's the political process. And then there's activities that come together to create this competition. So voting, and just voting by itself, is not politics. It's a part of it. It's an activity that exists within the competition, but voting just by itself is not politics. It's not politics in the totality of what it could be. For a lot of people, like, politics is just kind of treated as like voting. You go to a protest maybe every once in a while. Maybe you go canvassing for somebody, and these are all fine things to do, but this is a continual effort because this is a competition over scarce resources, and there's like various activities that comprise this competition, and these resources are scarce. So canvassing for a senator, which is time, right? Your time canvassing for a senator cannot also be used for canvassing for trans rights. You know what I'm trying to say? So these things matter in the long run of like how we structure ourselves politically. There's also intangible resources. So like I mentioned, tangibles like votes, money, time, policies that come about, but there's also intangibles like the agenda. Like, you can only have so many agenda items. So not every single thing is going to end up being an agenda item. And all agenda items it's just a list of items that a group needs accomplished. And again, like politics are group competitions. So different groups are going to come together competing over these scarce resources. Also, there's care and attention. Like, single mothers cannot care for everyone. Like black people cannot care for everyone because care is an intangible resource and this resource is scarce. So black people cannot care for everyone. Teachers cannot care for everyone. The military cannot care for everyone. And this care and attention influences how the group competition works. With that being said, something that's been kind of interesting for me over the past couple months, if not years, is this sort of like fight against group politics when politics is group competition. So you'll have people who will say wild things like, oh, you're just putting all of your eggs in the political basket over like one group or another group. And it's like, no shit, Sherlock. Like that's what politics are. And if you like recognize that politics is group competition over scarce resources and then the activities that comprise this competition, things make a lot more sense. So if we're talking about, say, black politics or any group politics, right? So like insert group name. It's just the different ways that population of people compete over scarce resources. So that's votes, money, time, the agenda, the care, the policy, and other stuff that have a significant impact on how that community and the people within it are structured. So black politics is just the different ways black populations compete over scarce resources that have a significant impact on how black communities and people within them are structured. That's all black politics is. And you can take out black, insert whatever group. So black people have competition, internal group competition, external, over scarce resources. Those resources being including but not excluded to time, money, policy, votes, agenda, care, and attention. And they create, in this case, black people, create little pockets of political thought that exist internally within black populations, where you find it and what those politics are, and like what those what the advocacy over those resources are is contextual based on where you find it. Because one type of black politics in one area is going to be different than another area. There might be some similarities that create potential overlap, but altogether, like this group competition is what black politics is. And this is true for other groups of people. Now I'm making and working on a way of explaining what makes white people and what it means to be white. So it's a very tricky thing politically. Not only politically, socially, and culturally. There's a bunch of things. We're gonna get to that eventually. It's just gonna take a little bit more attention and care to like really like kind of explain what's happening. Because white people move in a different way when it comes to politics. Especially when it comes to like group competition within politics. So we're gonna have to kind of like take some time with the members of the white delegation to really like articulate what's happening. But generally, politics is group competition over scarce resources and the various activities that comprise this competition. And then group politics is just the way that different populations of people compete over scarce resources, those resources being care, agenda, policies, money, time, I think I said time twice, votes, care, agenda, among other things that have a significant impact on how that group is structured and the people within them are structured. And we have to stop acting like we can come completely together as an honestly as a nation. It's impossible for every single group to come together on everything. It's impossible. And we had to recognize that, I think, in a very honest manner. So we stop falling into this trap of bipartisan support. Bipartisan support, and we might talk about this in another video, is kind of nonsense. If we recognize that these resources are scarce, you might be able to have two sides of the aisle to come together on time, or like one resource towards a particular issue. But at the end of the day, you're not going to have like a full line by line convergence on, like, if we're talking about four in this case of the tangibles: votes, money, time, and policy. They're never going to converge. What happens a lot of times is that Democrats, because they don't set the rules, they compromise a lot. So, and Republicans compromise too, but they don't really compromise in the same way the Democrats compromise. And again, this is a group competition. It's group competition over scarce resources. So you're not going to have bipartisan agreement over the allocation of resources unless it isn't. I can't even think of a time historically where, for instance, if we're talking about four, that Democrats and Republicans came together on votes, money, time, and policy over any issue. There's always some level of, because these resources are scarce, some level of like strategic allocation, and even intangibles, like strategic allocation over agenda, strategic allocation over care and attention. It's just like how it works. And it's totally okay to be wary of people who don't have the same, and because we do this all the time, we need to be wary over people who don't have the same like opinions and navigation around what we ought to do with particular resources. Like, if you don't agree with a person who feels like money needs to be allocated in X way and you believe it needs to be allocated another way, they don't have to be part of your politics. You don't have to be, they don't have to be part of the group that you're creating and cultivating. If there's a person that's not online with your agenda items, then they don't need to be within your group, like, and they shouldn't. If there are people who have different levels of attention and care that are incompatible with what you find your, like, what the group agrees to find yourself in, there's no reason why they should be in there in the first place. Because again, like, friction is inevitable, disagreement is inevitable, but you don't have to bend over backwards to accommodate people who extremely disagree with you on certain on how resources should be allocated. Like, there's just certain disagreements that are just bridges too far, and you should protect yourself over people who want you to compromise over things that are hardline for you. So, for instance, like, if you are somebody who is in support of reparations and there's just somebody within your who believes themselves to be part of your group who is vastly against that, and reparations is an agenda item that's of importance, again, a thing that needs to be accomplished, like, then why are they with you? It doesn't make any sense. And that's okay. Like, sometimes, like, as you grow and understand your world around you, something that you might have felt very passionate about as a resource might change. The way that you think policy should be done can change. Time allocated can change. Votes can change. And that's okay. And it's okay that people who may have felt very strongly within your group and then, like, their opinions might change, their views might change, or like all that's, it's okay for change. And it's okay for change to be so different that they're no longer part of your group. There's nothing wrong with that. And we have to stop, or I'll say stop. Yeah, I'll say stop. We have to stop acting like that's a bad thing. Gatekeeping is fine and happens everywhere. Like, so we got to embrace gatekeeping. We have to embrace tension. We have to embrace disagreement, but disagreement is fine and encouraged and not a pejorative. It's not a negative thing to disagree with people. Yeah, because that's how it is. Again, this is a competition. It's group competition over scarce resources. So we don't have the time and energy to, if there's somebody who doesn't agree with how how the time is being spent, they don't need to be there. Like, they don't need to be there. If there's somebody who disagrees on like all of your agenda items, but then they agree on certain, maybe like a couple tangible things, and that creates enough friction, they don't have to be there. They can find another group that aligns with that type of stuff, and which should be encouraged to be like, hey, this ain't working, but maybe give some recommendations on where they should like pick up their satchel or whatever, Pokemon style, where to go. Like, it's okay for that to happen. But yeah, to round up, politics, again, group competition over scarce resources and the various activities that comprise this competition. Group politics are the ways that populations compete over scarce resources, and that have a significant impact on how that group is structured and the people within it are structured. And there's different types of tangible and intangible resources. Tangible resources are the things that you can see, like money, time, policies, votes. These are things that you can see. Like, you can take your glasses and look at it. Go, oh, these are the votes. Oh, these are the money. This is the money, sorry. Intangibles, such as care and attention, the amount of like literally how we care about different groups of people and the attention that we give to different groups of people, that's an intangible resource. It's not something we can practically see all the time. Another is agenda, just a list of items that a group needs accomplished. These are intangible things that aren't clear as day in all contexts. But these tangible and intangible resources come together to create the resources that groups compete over. And these resources are scarce. And there's various activities that comprise this competition. Not one activity is the totality of this competition. And to really drive the point home, there's more to basketball than being a three-point shooter. There's more to basketball than being good at free throws. If you're really, really good at free throws, but trash at everything else, you're going to have a difficult time in the group competition over scarce resources, and it's have a difficult time competing in the game. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a 100% 3-point ratio. If you can't guard, you're going to have problems. And your ability to compete over within the game is going to be difficult. And there's a bunch of different examples we can do over that. But your time, and this is your resource of time with this video, is probably pretty short. So that's all I got for now. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.